Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, beautiful people, wherever you are watching us from in the world. I am so touched by the conversation that we are about to have today. I came across Caroline Roodhouse on LinkedIn. I was so touched by your story. And I just remembered because in the pre-chat we had a little talk about how it all started. I just remembered I saw your daughter's video, and we'll definitely get to that point as well. But it really drew me in. It touched me so deeply, and I knew I had to talk to you, Caroline. So after our pre-chat, you were instantly like, "Yes, I'll come and speak to you on Silence Grief." Without further ado, I'm so happy that you're here. Can you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here today. And I'm very pleased we connected too. Like you say, it
Thank
was
you.
over the animation that I shared
Yeah.
that my daughter Evie was part of creating, so we can talk about that later. But
Yes.
yeah, I had an interesting few years, having lost my husband to suicide in 2018, which is something I talk about openly and frequently to
Yeah.
help people understand what it's like to be left behind after a catastrophic loss like this,
Mm.
um, and how on earth somebody even begins to pick up the pieces. I think we're all aware of the statistics around mental health and suicide in particular, around men and how many
Yeah.
losses there are worldwide.
Mm.
Um, and the impact of that is just mind blowing. The statistics suggest that for every death by suicide, there's around 135 people that are then impacted in one way or another. And
It's
being one of
incredible.
those people, and my children too,
Of
it
course.
feels it feels right to talk about it and to
Yeah.
try and help others with
Yeah.
greater awareness.
Yeah. Caroline, I'm so grateful for you that you are willing to talk about this because the courage that it takes to actually talk about something that is so confronting. And also in terms of your children, do you mind me asking how old were your children when it all happened?
No, of course. So I have two daughters,
Mhm.
and at the time in 2018, Evie was 9 and Ada was just two, about two and a
Wow.
half.
Yeah.
And my husband, Steve, was an amazing dad to both of them,
Mm.
which is even more of a loss that we feel
Yeah.
now. But
I
yeah,
can only imagine.
focusing on supporting them and being
Yeah.
a single parent now, or as I refer to it, a double parent, because I do
Mm. Oh, I
work.
like that.
Yes, it's quite a useful one.
I like that very much, yeah. Because I often talk about for me, it's a distinction between a single parent and a sole parent. As a single parent, there's always another single parent floating around somewhere, no matter how much or little supportive they are, but there's somebody else to share costs and responsibilities, etc. As a sole parent, you're it. But I really love that you say a double parent. That makes so much sense. I'm going to
Yeah,
adopt
absolutely.
that.
It's the kind of emotional support that you need to
Yeah,
provide for them on top of everything
absolutely.
else. Two grieving children. They're now
Yeah,
Evie's now 15 and Ada is now 8, and
yeah,
the journey we've been on together, how I've supported their kind of grieving journey has been very
yeah.
different from one
Mm.
child to the next because of the different ages
Of
and
course.
their
Yeah,
vastly different understanding of
yeah.
um, mental health and suicide and what
Mm.
happened to Daddy.
Yeah, of course. What puzzles me is that usually the number one go-to question when people hear about suicide is always like, "Did you see it coming?" And I don't even want to ask you this question. I mean, you're more than welcome to talk about it, but I always feel like, um, as if that was the number one thing. I would rather ask you the question, can you tell me a little bit about your husband? What was he like? Can you share a little bit? What was he like as a family person, as a person before he had kids? If you want to share, I'd really love to hear about him.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for asking. Steve was brilliant. He was funny. He was very laid back, light-hearted. I'm quite an uptight, stressful person, and he
Oh,
balanced me out perfectly. So we made
that's
it
beautiful.
we'd been together for 18 years when he died. A
Mm.
big chunk of that was before we were married and before we had children, and
Yeah.
we sort of came together over our love for travel and adventure,
Mm.
and traveled the world together. He
Hmm.
had a huge circle of friends all over the world, including in
Mm.
Australia. We came to Australia several times,
Hmm.
and we had amazing adventures together, both before we had children and once we had children, but they were slightly
Hmm.
different adventures, as you
Yeah, I
probably know.
can only imagine. Yeah.
He was kind and caring and thoughtful. He was funny. He was a little bit unsure of himself, which kind of added to his charm. And in
Mm.
his working life, he looked after a team of people across different agencies and organizations. He worked in field marketing,
Hmm.
and he would kind of grow people into the positions they were subsequently put into. He was
Hmm.
described as a motivational and inspirational leader of people, and he really had a way of getting the most out of people and
Mm.
making them feel valued and considered. So I think both in his personal life and in his professional life, he was very, very well liked and well respected. But
That's
going
beautiful.
to your other question, I'm more than happy to answer your question about spotting signs, because it can be hard to imagine how you can go from somebody like that to then
Yeah.
somebody taking their own life, and it's something
Yeah.
I still struggle with today.
Absolutely. I also don't mind asking this question. I just didn't want it to be the first question. I wanted to hear about him first. I wanted to
I
know who he was like as a person, and yeah.
Yeah, and
And how, before we get there, please, and I'm more than happy for you to, we can answer that question, but I'd love to hear the story how you two met,
oh,
if
okay,
that's
so
okay.
yeah, it's a nice
I
story.
love romantic stories, so I'd really like to hear it.
Yeah, it's lovely, and the proposal is actually lovely too. So I'd recently come out of a relationship that wasn't great, and I was living back with my mum, um, and struggling a little bit. And a friend of mine had said, "Oh, I know somebody that is single, and I could set you up with." And I said, "Absolutely no way. I'm not interested." And the next thing I knew, I'm sat in a pub with a group of people, and Steve is sat directly opposite me, which I think was quite strategic positioning from this
Mm-hmm.
friend of and
I love this.
uncomfortable and awkward, and so was he. But by the end of that evening, we'd found we had so much in common, and we never
Mm.
stopped talking. And I think we saw each other every single day after that. It wasn't long
Wow.
before I'd um I'd moved in with him, and we'd started these amazing adventures together.
Mm.
He introduced me to all of his friends. We went to Ireland, we went to Spain, we went to Australia. He was best man at his best friend's wedding in Australia, where we
Oh, nice.
together. And on that particular trip, we'd been together for a few years by then, and I
Hmm.
had um, decided that he was going to propose. He hadn't mentioned
You had decided. Oh God, I
it.
love this.
And after the wedding in Sydney, we went to the Hunter Valley, and we
Mm.
stayed in a
Beautiful.
beautiful little place. And it was the perfect moment, where we were sat outside having dinner, and you could see the kangaroos hopping around in the
Oh.
background, in amongst the vineyards. And I thought, this is the moment, it's going to happen. And it didn't. It never came.
Oh, no.
Plane on the way home, I questioned him over this. Did he propose during that perfect? And he
Yeah.
said, it wasn't the right time. It was Jeremy's time. We'd come over for his wedding and
Oh,
moment, and he said, our special moment will come. And
mm. That
about a
is so
year later,
adorable, though. I love
isn't
that.
it? I probably didn't think
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I just wanted my special moment. But
Of
no,
course.
I had
I get that.
issue. had to wait another year, and we were on holiday in Turkey, and we'd gone on a day trip to the mud
Mm.
baths, which I don't know if you've experienced that, but they are quite stinky and not
Yeah,
very romantic
I've
at
heard
all.
about them. I have not experienced it.
I think it reflects Steve's character, that he's so down to earth and so there's no whistles and bells, there's no labels and
Mm.
hierarchy of anything. It's all about just being down to earth. And we're sat in this mud bath, and he took my hand and he rubbed a little clean patch in the mud on my
Oh,
finger, and asked me to marry him. And there were lots of cheers from all the
oh,
strangest of us, and
I love
somewhere
this though. This is so beautiful.
I wasn't sure at the
Rubbed
time.
a little
I was
clean patch on my finger. I
hol-
love it.
holding my nose, and the first thing I wanted to do was go and shower all this stinking mud off. But
Oh.
it was absolutely memorable, and I've got a lovely
Mm.
photo of us together, covered in mud, with a little plastic glasses to
Yeah,
celebrate that moment. I will never forget, and that
this
was
is rather
absolutely,
unique though. This is
yes,
very
indeed,
unique.
absolutely the right choice not to
Yeah,
ask me that question when we were in
yeah,
Australia. Someone else things.
yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. I really, really love it. And oh my God, this is amazing. Like you're telling me this story, and I've got the skylight above me, and there's this really orangey glow all over. It must be the most amazing sunset right now. It's just so perfect, the whole backdrop to this setting. I really love it.
In the Hunter
Pardon
Valley
me?
at that time,
Oh,
but yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. I love it. So, fast forward, you're more than welcome to answer this question because I can only imagine that a lot of people would think, how on earth is this even possible? You had so much love, the romance, everything was there, beautiful daughters. What happened?
That is a good question. I don't have all the answers to that question,
Yeah,
which is frustrating for me and for my children
yeah,
and for everybody that knew Steve. Over time, he did go from this cheerful, happy-go-lucky guy to someone who was a bit quieter, a bit more
mm,
withdrawn. I put that down to children and life and work and getting older, as we all do, having
mhm,
slightly less energy. Um, and just life in general. I didn't suspect that there were any kind of mental health challenges. He certainly never
yeah,
suggested that there were any. He had his
mm,
ups and downs with work. He did when another trip we had to Australia, I broke my spine, which was a huge strain on us
wow,
as it was actually on our honeymoon.
oh my goodness,
That took its toll on us for a good year or two, and then after
mm,
that we had a series of losses in our family. His dad died from a brain tumor, and the year after that, his
mm,
mum was hit by a car and she died. And then following
yeah,
that, my dad died from cancer, and it was a horrible time. And then we had our two girls,
mm,
um, both quite poorly when they were born. They're fine now, but
mm,
all of these things, I think, factored into his mental state that he
yeah,
didn't talk. I can only guess at which one of those or which combination of those
yeah,
experiences contributed to where he ended up.
mhm,
Maybe it was something I know nothing about.
mm,
But one day it was on the 12th of November in 2018, I was getting the girls ready for school and nursery, and Steve was getting ready for work, and off he went, kissed us goodbye.
mm,
Um, Before he left, I said I had a sore throat, and he went flying up the stairs, grabbed some throat sweets for me because that was just the type of person that he was,
yeah,
and to travel to work. And it was later that day that I had a call from his work to let me know that he hadn't turned up. Um, that evening, I reported it to the police. Clearly, it was a horrendous time and just frantic worry of not knowing where he
yeah,
was, assuming it was maybe a car accident or something like that. I had no reason to believe at all that what happened was coming.
yeah.
And then 2 days later, I had a visit from the police who
2
uh,
days later.
Yes,
That would
that
have
was another.
been the most excruciating 2 days for you, not
It
knowing.
and not knowing what to say to the children either, who again were 9 and 2
Of
years
course.
old, and
Yeah.
trying to keep together. But they knocked on the door on the Wednesday morning, and one of them took me by the shoulders and looked me in the eye and said, "We found him, and um, he's not alive, and it's clear that he's done it to himself." And that was just the most shattering moment. And from then on, nothing has ever been the same again. And
Yeah.
there's no explanation, but there's a huge amount of emotion. I think when it comes to suicide, I describe it as grief with a microphone. I've
Yeah.
experienced many losses, but when it comes to suicide and all these additional complex emotions,
Yeah.
everything's just bigger and louder and harder.
Yeah.
That's what we've been dealing with for the last 5 years.
Wow. I would love to talk about your daughter. This is what drew my attention to you in the first place as well. And absolutely would love to share a little bit more about your emotional state and the holding space for your daughters as well. But can you share a little bit? I know we're jumping ahead of time now, but can you share a little bit about the video that Evie made? Because that was just so heartwarming for me.
Yeah,
Her
absolutely. I would
background
love,
as well, obviously. Yeah.
of course.
Mm.
That's a proud mummy moment.
I cannot imagine.
Uh, so obviously it was horrendous directly after Steve's death and everything we had to deal with. But as time went on, we found different ways to cope, with support from various people,
Mhm.
various charities and those sorts of things. And after lots of kind of ups and downs and a really rocky road, we got to kind of 2 years on, and Evie started senior school at the age of 11.
Mhm.
So in the UK, that's year 7.
Yeah,
Um,
same here.
and okay.
Yeah.
And she, um, I was hopeful that it would just be a normal experience. And in the most part it was, but she would hear language being used that was quite upsetting around the subject of suicide. There were some horrible jokes from other kids, but there were also kind of innocent um, statements that people would make, things like, "I'll kill myself if I've got to sit through another maths lesson like that," or
Yeah.
this acronym
That you would
KY.
never think about. That you would never think about if you haven't experienced anything like that. Yeah.
No harm intended, but
Mm.
perhaps a bit of thoughtlessness around
But definitely harm caused. Yeah.
this acronym KYS that the kids would use on
Mm.
social media or on WhatsApp, where
Yeah.
they'd say "kill yourself," and
Yeah.
that really get to her, and she'd have days where she couldn't even go to school because she was so afraid to hear this language. And she did
Yeah.
what I do um, to deal with it, and that was to write about it. So
Mm.
she wrote a story about how this language was making her feel. And I
Mm.
shared that with the agency that I work with. It's a creative communications
Mhm.
agency. And between Evie and some very lovely volunteers from the agency, Alive with Ideas, they're called,
Mhm.
the animation was created, which is called Words Matter.
Yeah.
And we have the link to that. And it basically tells the story of how Evie lost her dad to suicide and the impact that this language
Yeah.
then had on her, and
Yeah.
how it's in no way a laughing matter or a subject to take
Not
light.
at all. Yeah.
Um, and
I
it was
I just sorry, just very quickly. I would love, with your permission, I would love to share the link to this video as well in the show notes. And
Mhm.
I am going to quickly switch my light on because it's getting very dark in here. That's better. We have light now. So yeah, I would love to share the link in the show notes. And how did this actually come about? The idea of hearing words, hearing language as anything else but supportive at school. to then turning it into an animated video. Who came up with this idea? I think it is so brilliant, and I'm so touched by it. So please, when you're watching this, you need to click in the show notes and watch this video. I'm really a huge fan of her work.
Thank you. Yeah, I think working in communication and understanding how to make an impact with key messages like that, and with the support of the agency and the input from them,
Yeah,
this raw story that Evie had to tell, putting all those things together, combined into this beautiful animation that's made such a huge impact. It's being
yeah,
shared in schools all over the world,
yeah.
workplaces too, in
Oh,
their health training. Different charities are using it,
yeah,
and the NHS are using it in their induction training to help
yeah,
people understand the importance of being a bit more
yeah.
considerate of the language that we use. So it's not just for young people. It's
Mm.
I mean, it's relevant
Not at
to
all.
it.
I think it speaks such a universal language, really, because for me, the biggest thing talking about language, in the work that I do, I always say I want to offer you not just tools, but also language to use around grief, around death, around suicide. I think our society has really not prepared us well. There is nothing at school that teaches you how to deal with it. There is very rarely a case where people talk about it growing up unless there is a case of death or suicide in the family. It is not a topic that is easily talked about. It is a rather heavy topic, but my biggest hope, not just with the podcast Unsilence Grief, but also with the work that I do, with the work that you do, and so many others that are, growing our circles, that we do change that, that we do make it a topic that can be talked about with more ease, and especially with an open heart and mind, and to listen to that. So that video, I am absolutely certain has changed a lot of lives and a lot of people's opinion about death and suicide. So I really would love for you to say my personal thank you to Evie for putting this together, because I'm just so really touched by it. It's amazing.
I will absolutely, thank you. And I think it's really supported her on her recovery journey as well, which has
Yeah,
been brilliant. It's also given her a huge amount of confidence. So she now does
yeah.
things like she'll go to schools, junior schools, where she'll talk to other groups of children in assemblies about mental health and those sorts of
Oh,
things. And she became
wow.
a mental health ambassador in her own school and
Oh,
has
wow.
a huge amount of recognition for that. So
Incredible.
it's been a platform for so many good
Mm,
things. And in fact, she's just been shortlisted for a mental health award in the
mm,
UK for her work, not just on the video, but beyond that, and all
mm.
these other
Yeah,
things that she's doing. So
yeah.
absolutely
It's definitely given her a voice. Yeah. I'll cross my
definitely
fingers for her, and tell her Australia is rooting for her. I'm really,
it's a
yeah,
great example
amazed.
of her as well, who's
Yeah.
only 8, and she follows in her footsteps and copies everything that Big
I
Sister
just wanted to
does.
ask you that. You've taken that away from me. No, in the nicest possible way. How is her little sister going? What's her sister's name, please?
She's Ada,
Ada.
and
And
yeah,
how is she today? Can you share a little bit about who Ada
yeah,
is and what she does?
she's very different. She's
Mm.
much more she's louder. So Evie is very quiet,
Yeah.
and Eve was a bit like that, a bit more reserved, whereas I'm a bit noisier, and Ada's
Mm,
exactly the same for me in that
mm,
respect. Um, she's been very different. Her journey has been very different because she had no understanding of grief or loss at the age of
she
2,
was too,
and
of course.
no understanding of suicide and what that means. So
Yeah.
it's been a more gradual, slow journey with her,
Yeah.
and arguably much more challenging because there's still more to come with her.
Mm,
I've had to drip feed the information across a longer period of time,
yeah. Of course.
which she's taken on board well. In fact, on the way to school not that long ago, she just came out with a really uh, powerful statement, and she said, "Mummy, men don't grieve and they don't cry, and they should, because they'll live longer. If
Wow.
they let the tears out, they'll live longer." And that
That's
that kind of hit
incredible.
me understand how things are working in her mind on this kind of
Yeah.
slow journey of understanding. It's sad, it's horribly sad, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's reassuring
But
to know
it's
that
so impressive for her to say that at the age of 8. That is incredible. I I think I sort of understand how bittersweet that is, because I look at my two boys and they were 10 and 8. My husband died the same year like yours. And so they're now 16 and 14. And I look at them and they're so ahead of their age from a maturity level point, and like from the emotional maturity. And it is so beautiful and humbling to watch that. But at the same time, it is bittersweet because we know why that is. So I'd love to hear a little bit about you before we wrap this up, in terms of who are you today? How do you feel that has shaped your identity now? And of course, I'd love to also know, how can people get in touch with you if they want to? So a lot to cover now, but I'll hand that back to you.
well, thank you. So today, I think I'm a very different person to the one I was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I'd say I'm a bit more cautious, a bit more reserved. We've obviously had
Mm.
um, major events in the world since then too, like
Yeah.
COVID-19, which
Mm.
has had its own impact too. I am a fiercely protective mother. I am committed to reducing stigma around suicide and all that
Thank you.
relates to it. I am very much connected to um, a huge community of amazing people, particularly through
Mm.
LinkedIn, who are all
Mm.
out there being very vocal for all the right reasons about suicide and the impact it
Yeah.
can have, how we can come together,
Yeah. I,
raise
I want
awareness.
to pause you there for 1 second, because I really just want to highlight what you just said there. I I am so positively surprised how much this topic has really risen on LinkedIn. There's so much talk about, so many posts about mental health awareness, suicide awareness. There has been a huge shift that I've noticed over the past, I'd say probably 2 to 5 years. It was gradual, but I've really noticed. I think it is also, of course, where you put your own focus, you notice more of that. But in general, I think there was a huge shift on LinkedIn, which really touches me in such a positive way, because I feel this is where we all need to go. LinkedIn was so work related and Facebook was for all the personal stuff and gossip. And now all of a sudden, LinkedIn has become this softer platform where it's still about business, but it has the human touch that was really missing for me. I did not spend a lot of time on LinkedIn because of that. So I really love that you said that. I just wanted to highlight that. It's really beautiful that we talk about it so much these days.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. LinkedIn has been pivotal
Yeah.
for me. It's
Yeah.
a space I feel part of a community. I
Mm.
feel welcome. I feel supported and heard.
Yeah.
And that has been, I think, arguably the most significant part of my healing journey, to become
Mm.
part of the community where we're making a difference and we're speaking out and we're coming together to tackle this ongoing issue around suicide and mental health that
Yeah.
has previously been tucked under the carpet, and it's no longer hidden away. We're bringing it
Yeah.
out into
Mm.
and actually tackling it.
Yeah. Beautiful. I'm so grateful that you came here today to share a little bit about your world and Evie's work that she's been doing. You are, if I may say so, an incredible mom. I'm so, so happy that we connected. I'm really, really touched by what you enable there, and how you are guiding Evie on her journey of being an ambassador at such a young age for something that is so important. And I feel it is beautiful to watch how it is giving her a very different stand and purpose as well in all of that. Caroline, if you would be able to leave people with one thing, what is the main thing that you would like people to get away from this podcast?
That's very tricky. I think one thing is
You
hard
can choose
to.
a couple if you like.
I, I might have to go. I think the whole language thing is really
Mm,
important. And it's something that I've talked about quite significantly in my book that I've written, which is called Daddy
yeah.
Blackbird. And I've got a website which you can have a look on to kind of read the
Hmm.
full story.
Yeah.
The book comes on the 10th of October, so that covers um,
10th of the
all
10th. Please mark that in your calendar. Is there a list where people can put their name down for when it comes out, or
is on daddyblackbird.com. You can download some free chapters actually of the book.
we'll
But
make
there's
sure
a
to share
lot
that
of
in the show notes?
Thank you. There's a
Mm,
lot of messages in there that I want to share, particularly in the
yeah.
third section, which is all about hope. And that would be one of my key messages, that
Yeah.
there is hope for people in this position. I might not have felt that several years ago,
Mm,
but I'm living proof that there is, not just for myself, but for my children too. Um, and the other thing that I would like to leave you with, which is actually using Evie's words from the animation.
mhm.
Um, it's the last line, which is words matter. So think before you
Yes.
speak. Please make
Mm,
kindness a promise that you keep. And I think that message about kindness can get lost sometimes these days in the busyness of work and life.
yes.
Uh, and I think it can make a huge difference if we're a bit more compassionate. And you
Yeah.
used the word human just now, which
Mm,
is really critical, and really
yeah.
important to me. And one of the
Yeah.
things that has changed for me mostly is about just taking the time to be a bit kinder to people,
Yeah.
whoever they are.
And to ourselves. Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%.
Word matters. Kindness matters. What you just shared with us today matters so much to me. And I cannot thank you enough for being here. I really wish you all the best for all three of your futures. And we will certainly share all the links how you can get in touch with Caroline. There will be her website, her LinkedIn profile, as well as the website for the upcoming book, Toy Toy Toy. I wish you all the best for the book launch. And yeah, if you guys watching this got value out of this, please consider sharing the podcast. Please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you never miss an episode of Unsilenced Grief. Caroline, thank you so much for being here today. This is Caroline and Marie signing off. Bye for now.
Thank you.